In the hyper-financialised world of Premier League football, where roughly 70% of the division's players were born overseas, a figure that rises to 80% when it comes to the division's top 6, it can be incredibly difficult for young English players to break into a Premier League first team. Nonetheless, supporters still love to see a local lad come good and perform at the highest level, if anything, even more than they did in years gone by, with the accomplishment having become so infrequent. There are signs of progress though. The Premier League has brought in fairly lenient homegrown player rules, stipulating that 8 out of the 25 players in a Premier League squad must be homegrown, and this has seen an uptick in the number of English players competing in England's top tier. The 2019-20 season saw the highest percentage of English players playing in the Premier League since the 2011-12 campaign, reversing a long-standing trend and giving some hope to young players looking to make the grade in Premier League academies right now. With all of that in mind, I thought I'd take a stab at naming the best academy graduates in each Premier League team right now. The only criteria is simply that they must have spent time in their current club's academy from the age of 16 or below, and it is based on current ability rather than future potential. Here are my views on every Premier League team's best current academy graduate. Arsenal. Hector Bellerin. There's not a lot to split a handful of ex-academy players at Arsenal right now, and before you go googling, Bellerin joined the Gunners Academy from Barcelona at the age of 16, meaning he just about qualifies. If you wanted a more definitive example, you could take your pick of Bukayo Saka, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Reece Nelson, Joe Willock, and Eddie Nketiah. In fact, I suspect that Arsenal have the second largest and most talented ex-academy first-team contingent in the Premier League right now. And of those who I've just mentioned, Saka is probably the most exciting prospect as far as I'm concerned. As for Bellerin, he is now in his 9th season in North London, and whilst the popular right-back or right-wing-back's career has tended to ebb and flow, he may well flourish in the stronger unit which Mikel Arteta appears to have built at the Emirates. Aston Villa. Jack Grealish. Maybe the easiest decision in this entire video, Jack Grealish isn't just the best academy graduate at Aston Villa, he is the best player at Aston Villa, and by some distance too. Grealish recently put pen to paper on a new 5-year deal at Villa Park, and that's welcome news to Villa fans, because without him, they'd be in real trouble. Born in Birmingham, Grealish joined the Villa Academy at the age of 6, and whilst his talent was always clear for all to see, consistent good form was a long time coming. It took Dean Smith and the captain's armband to fully unleash Grealish's potential, and he was among the most creative midfielders in the Premier League last season, despite the fact he was playing for a team that only narrowly avoided relegation. Brighton. Lewis Dunk. Following the competitiveness of Arsenal, it has been 2 absolute gifts, and Lewis Dunk was as easy a selection and as much of a formality as Jack Grealish. Dunk was born in Brighton, but he first joined the academy of Premier League side Wimbledon. When Wimbledon were liquidated and a new team was created in the town of Milton Keynes, Dunk joined his boyhood club Brighton. At one stage, the dominant centre-back went on trial with Crystal Palace, who offered him a contract, but Dunk and his family turned it down due to the travel involved with training 3 times a week in London. Brighton fans will be immensely grateful for that decision, partly due to their rivalry with the Eagles, but primarily because Dunk has gone on to make over 300 appearances on the South Coast, captaining Brighton with distinction, and becoming one of the most reliable centre-backs in the Premier League and an England international. Burnley. Dwight McNeil. I'm a big fan of Jay Rodriguez, who I'm backing to hit double figures if he can avoid injury this season, but as Burnley's best current academy graduate, I have to lean towards Dwight McNeil. Burnley fans often suggest that if McNeil were playing for a more fashionable team, he would be talked about far more frequently and would probably have already received an England call-up. I'm not sure about the latter, but by and large, I would tend to agree, since McNeil is a really classy operator whose technique stands out almost every time I've seen the Clarets in action. A Rochdale native, McNeil joined Burnley's academy from Manchester United when he was only 14, and the 20-year-old has already registered 67 appearances for Sean Dyche's men. Chelsea. Reece James. The most difficult decision in this entire video, in my humble opinion, no team has a more illustrious list of former academy graduates in the Premier League right now than Chelsea. They have Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, Reece James, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Billy Gilmore, and Fikayo Tomori, all of whom were in and around the first team last season and will hope to be once again this term. I think Hudson-Odoi still has the most potential, but that's not the basis of this video, meaning it was a choice of Mount, Abraham, or James. I was torn between Mount and James in terms of talent right now, but ultimately, I think James is a better right back than Mount is central midfielder or number 10. The 20-year-old, who joined Chelsea at the age of 7, has all the tools to become a really top-class fullback. I'm hoping he can nail down a right-back spot this season, although I suspect he'll be rotated with Cesar Azpilicueta, but I have no doubt he'll be the Blues' long-term right-back, barring some kind of disaster. Out of interest, since this was such a tight call, I thought I'd get your views on Twitter, where around a third of you agreed with me, meanwhile Mount led the way with a slightly higher share of the votes. I wouldn't argue for too long with anyone in the Mount camp, and if you'd like to follow me on Twitter or Instagram and join in with future discussions of that ilk, the username is just at HITC Sevens on both of those popular social media platforms. Crystal Palace, WILFRIED ZAHA. Joining around half a dozen others in the category of decisions that didn't even require a second's thought, like Jack Grealish and Lewis Dunk, WILFRIED ZAHA is both Palace's best academy graduate and player right now. Born in the Ivory Coast, Zaha's family moved to London when he was only 4 years old, and Palace fans will be very grateful that they did. Zaha joined the youth ranks at Selhurst Park when he was just 12, and 6 years later, he made his debut against Cardiff City. Zaha became a shining light in the Palace first team in the Championship before being snapped up by Alex Ferguson as the legendary manager's last ever signing. Zaha never got much of a chance at Old Trafford, later rejoining Palace, who are currently demanding £45 million for the dangerous 27-year-old white man, which seems to be enough to prevent anyone from coming in for him. Everton. Tom Davies. To be honest, the future of Everton's two most prominent current academy graduates, Tom Davies and John Joe Kenny, tend to split opinion among Toffees fans, and neither cover themselves in any particular glory as Carlo Ancelotti's men defeated Salford City 3-0 in the EFL Cup. Nevertheless, between the two of them, I have to go for Davies, who has made far more appearances for Everton and has at least shown promise at Goodison Park in the past. Davies impressed in the 2017-18 season in a poor Everton midfield, but he suffered an injury last season and has slipped down the pecking order now. I suspect he'll still come in handy when Carlo Ancelotti requires rotation, but any talk of an England call-up has certainly died down. Fulham. Steven Sessegnon. Fulham are one of only two current Premier League teams without a single academy graduate in their first team squad, which is surprising for a team that's had a decent conveyor belt of young talent over the last decade. The Cottagers obviously sold Ryan Sessegnon to Spurs for £25 million last summer, and in the absence of a single first-team academy graduate, I have to go for his brother Stephen here. The versatile 20-year-old, who probably plays his best football at fullback, made 12 appearances under Scott Parker last season, but was sent out on loan this season. He'll most likely do a very good job now he's at Bristol City, and one suspects Fulham still have long-term plans for the England under-21 international. Leeds United. Kalvin Phillips. Whilst the Leeds United Academy is a strong one, some of Marcelo Bielsa's most talented young players prove that they aren't yet ready for first-team action, as his team bowed out against Hull City in the second round of the EFL Cup on Tuesday night. The one Leeds Academy graduate who most assuredly is ready for first-team action, and indeed is arguably Leeds' most important player, is recent England debutant Kalvin Phillips. The combative and athletic midfield all-rounder has become a vital part of the way in which Bielsa wants Leeds to play, always looking to give an option in the middle of the park and covering immense ground off the ball. Phillips was born in Leeds, he joined the Whites Academy at the age of 14, and a decade on, he's likely to reach 200 Leeds appearances around the midway point this season. Leicester City. Harvey Barnes. Leicester City have recruited remarkably well over the last 9 years, but in addition to their fine work in the transfer market, they have also had a sprinkling of homegrown talent. Luke Thomas and Hamza Chowdhury both came through the youth ranks at the King Power Stadium, but right now, you would be a fool to look anywhere other than Harvey Barnes. Born in Burnley but raised in Leicestershire, Barnes is the son of prolific former lower league marksman Paul Barnes. He joined the Leicester Academy when he was just 9 years old, and the 22-year-old has now played 64 games for the Foxes, in addition to loan moves with MK Dons, Barnsley and West Bromwich Albion. Versatile, creative and good on the ball, Barnes made a whopping 42 appearances last season alone, and he should have a big future with the former Premier League champions. Liverpool. Trent Alexander-Arnold. I could mention Curtis Jones, Nico Williams and a handful of others, but I might as well just cut to the chase since obviously Liverpool's best academy graduate right now is Trent Alexander-Arnold. The youngster put in a shaky performance in Liverpool's opening game of the season against Leeds, but the vast majority of his 135 first-team appearances at Anfield have been superb. Occasionally found wanting defensively, Jurgen Klopp is more than comfortable with the compromise of putting up with Trent's odd defensive flaw when balanced against what he offers Liverpool going forward. The most creative fullback in world football, Alexander-Arnold, is a tremendous crosser of the ball, and the 21-year-old who joined Liverpool at the age of 6 ought to hang up his boots as a bona fide Reds legend. Manchester City, Phil Foden. An honourable mention goes to Eric Garcia, who joined the Man City Academy at the age of 16, but the better player, who has been at the club for much longer, is Phil Foden. Someone who I seem to have talked about endlessly on this channel in recent months, those of you who subscribe know all too well what I think of Phil Foden. The 20-year-old was born in Stockport to a family of Man City fans, and he joined the Manchester City youth ranks at the age of 8. Now a full England international, who made 38 appearances under Pep Guardiola last season, Foden has all the talent to become a key man for both club and country, and one suspects we will get a good indication of just how good he is likely to become this season. Manchester United, Marcus Rashford. My sincere apologies go to Jesse Lingard, but my choice as Manchester United's best current former academy player has to go to the Red Devils' child-feeding, free-kick bending, and fullback beating wide man, Marcus Rashford. I might suggest that Mason Greenwood has the potential to become even better than Rashford, but based on the here and now, I think Rashford probably has a little bit more about him. Born in South Manchester, Rashford was just 7 years old when he was signed as an academy player, and 15 years on, he has scored 67 goals in 214 games for his boyhood club. Newcastle United, Sean Longstaff. There are a handful of academy graduates in the current Newcastle United squad, from Paul Dummett and Andy Carroll to Sean Longstaff's brother Matty. Andy Carroll obviously impressed Steve Bruce during pre-season, and who knows, perhaps if he can stay fit, he could surprise a few people this season, but I think the obvious shout, based on current talent, has to be Sean Longstaff. The 22-year-old North Shields native only made his Newcastle debut in the 2018-19 season, following a year on loan at Blackpool, but he became a regular last season prior to sustaining knee ligament damage. A calm and composed midfielder with a good range of passing and an impressive long shot, hopefully Longstaff can bounce back from that setback and give the Magpies fans something to shout about. Sheffield United, Aaron Ramsdale. Sheffield United legends Billy Sharp and Phil Jagielka both came through the youth ranks at Bramall Lane, but both are now approaching their final years in the game. Aaron Ramsdale is very much at the opposite end of his career as the youngest first-choice goalkeeper in the Premier League right now, and he recently returned to South Yorkshire from Bournemouth in a deal said to be worth £18.5 million. If he can continue to build upon his performances last season, which saw him named as the Cherries Player of the Year, then that'll prove to be another smart piece of business by the Premier League's most routinely underrated boss. Southampton, James Ward-Prowse. Southampton obviously have one of the most prestigious academies in English football, but having sold off most of the family jewels, and by that I mean most of their prized assets rather than their genitals, there aren't actually all that many first-team academy graduates in the Southampton squad. There is of course one very high-profile one though, and that is James Ward-Prowse, who captains the Saints these days. One of few players to play every minute of every one of his team's fixtures in the Premier League last season, Ward-Prowse is adored on the South Coast due to his commitment to the club and ability in midfield. Born in nearby Portsmouth to a family of Portsmouth fans, Ward-Prowse joins the Saints Academy when he was only 8 years old, and he has now played 280 games at St Mary's. Tottenham Hotspur, Harry Kane. One of, I would suggest, at least 5 and possibly 6 players in this video who are not just their team's best youth graduate, but their best player full stop, which isn't actually bad going out of 20 teams. If Harry Kane stays with Tottenham long term, he may well go down as the club's greatest player of all time. Born in Walthamstow, Kane joined the Tottenham Academy 2 years after he was let go by Arsenal for not being very athletic, and even as he came through the youth ranks at Spurs, there were few indications of a future world-class centre forward. During multiple loan moves, Kane failed to set the world alight, but he maintained a fantastic attitude to training and enormous self-belief. He got his big break in the 2014-15 season, grabbing it with both hands and bagging 31 goals in 51 games. As rival fans screeched one season wonder, Kane proceeded to bag 28 goals the following season, followed by 35 and then 41. Kane has had injury problems since that remarkable 41-goal campaign, but he remains lethal when fit, and by far Tottenham's most important player. West Brom, Romainne Sawyers. By my estimate, one of 3 players in this video to have come through a team's academy, been sold and then re-signed, along with WILFRIED ZAHA and Aaron Ramsdale, Romainne Sawyers was first sold by West Brom before he'd even made a single first-team appearance. He proved that the Baggies had been foolish to let him go at Walsall and at Brentford, becoming one of the most composed and capable midfielders in the Championship during his time in West London. West Brom were able to snap Sawyers back up last summer for just £2.9 million, an absolute snip for a man who made 43 appearances as the club won promotion last season, and for someone with a deep passion for the team and the region. West Ham. Declan Rice. I've seen a lot of people describe Declan Rice as being overrated in the comment section on my videos over the last couple of months, presumably in response to me waxing lyrical about him and the huge fees that he is being touted about for. Whilst I don't disagree that English players come with a certain premium and do tend to be built up only to be knocked down by the English press, I do think that Rice is a genuine talent. He does his best work off the ball, often going unnoticed, as his reading of the game allows him to sniff out danger and holds opposition attacks before they gain momentum. On the ball, Rice likes to keep things simple, but he's capable of taking a step out of holding midfield and picking a pass. An honourable mention must go to club legend Mark Noble, but I don't think many people, including Mark Noble himself, would claim that he was a superior footballer to Declan Rice. Wolves. Morgan Gibbs-White. As far as I'm aware, the only other team in the Premier League without a current former academy player in their first team squad, and I've no doubt you will all correct me in the comments if I am wrong, Wolves joined Fulham in that exclusive and perhaps somewhat dubious distinction. Wolves have the fewest English players of any team in the Premier League, with just 4, none of whom graduated from the team's own youth ranks. That being the case, as with Fulham, it's a current loanee who takes the crown, and I must say that I think Morgan Gibbs-White is an excellent loan signing by Swansea City this season. He might not quite be good enough to get game time at Molineux given the quality of Nuno Espirito Santo's first team squad, but he should be a gem at Championship level, and I think he's a really shrewd recruit by the Swans. So that is it for today's video. Thank you all as ever for watching. Give us a like if you enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and feel free also to subscribe to HITC Sevens and turn on notifications for the channel. And if you're a really big fan, you know that you can follow me on either Twitter or Instagram, where the username is simply @HITC Sevens.